Dad, maybe it's just better if you don't come this year. That was the sentence that ended 27 years of devotion. No warning. No discussion. Just a soft voice over speakerphone, saying I was no longer welcome at my own granddaughter's first birthday. My hand froze over the kitchen counter. I was holding a wrapped present. Still warm from the heater in my truck. A soft plush elephant, hand-stitched from a boutique in Boulder. I'd driven there on my lunch break. I stared at the phone as if it had more to say. As if the silence on the other end might suddenly crack open and say, "Just kidding, Dad. You know we'd never do that to you." But it didn't. And the strangest thing? I didn't argue. I just nodded, alone in my kitchen, and said, "Okay." Then I walked to the drawer where I kept the mortgage paperwork. The one with both my name, and theirs. 2 years earlier, my daughter Hannah had cried on that same phone. It was raining that night. My wife, Janine, and I had just finished watching some slow detective series she likes, and we were debating popcorn versus pie for dessert when the call came in. "Dad," she sniffled, "we're gonna lose the house." They'd bought beyond their means. A 3-story property in Fort Collins. Huge bay windows, a walk-in wine cellar, an infinity tub. Not that I ever saw it. But I paid for it. Her husband, Drew, worked in tech. "Start-up money," he always said with a smirk. Problem was, it didn't start up fast enough. And the mortgage company didn't care about buzzwords or coffee shop meetings. They needed help. "Just a few months," she said. "Until things stabilize." And I helped. Of course I helped. Not just once. Not just for a few months. Every third of the month, for 19 months straight, I transferred $2,175. Without fail. Without question. At first, they were grateful. Hannah would call with updates, "Dad, we're looking at preschools already." Drew would add, "I promise we'll get you your money back soon." I never asked for it. That wasn't the point. I just wanted my daughter to have a life I never could. I'm a tool supplier. Small operation. Steel, bolts, hinges. Not exactly glamorous. But I built it. I built something. And I wanted her to build something too. The baby came, and they named her Elise. Born on a snowy morning. Hannah sent a photo of Drew cradling her, smiling like a man who'd never held anything fragile before. "I want her to know her grandfather," Hannah had said that week. "We want you involved, Dad." But weeks turned to months, and calls got shorter. Sometimes, I'd be told, "It's not a good day." Other times, Janine and I would drive all the way up there only to find out they were out with friends, and forgot we were coming. Still, I kept sending the money. Because I thought that's what family did. Last weekend, Janine baked her best apple cobbler, the one with the brown sugar crust, and we both dressed up, brought a bouquet, and drove up for Elisa's early birthday brunch. When we arrived, there were cars lining the street. Mercedes, Teslas, even one Porsche. Balloons on the mailbox. Janine smiled, said, "They must have really gone all out." But when we rang the doorbell, no one answered. It took 15 minutes, and 2 texts, before Hannah opened the door. Her smile was tight. Forced. Behind her, we could see catered trays and servers dressed in black. Everything looked curated. "Sorry," she whispered. "It's mostly Drew's side today. His parents invited some people from work." I stepped forward with the gift bag. "We just wanted to drop this off. For Elise." She hesitated before taking it. Didn't even look inside. From the living room, I heard someone laugh loudly and say, "Isn't it great they hired a Spanish guitarist?" We weren't introduced to anyone. We weren't offered cake. We got back in the car after 3 minutes. Janine didn't speak the whole ride home. And now, 1 week later, came the call. We think it's better if you don't come this year. She tried to say it gently. That maybe Elise was too young for conflicting energies. Drew came on the line halfway through. It's nothing personal, Ron. We just think Elise should have a more curated circle. Familiar people. Aligned values, you know. Aligned values. That's what he said. I'd built their life from the ground up, and now I wasn't aligned. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I didn't argue. I just walked to the file cabinet, pulled out the manila folder with their mortgage documents, the ones I'd co-signed to refinance their debt, and placed it quietly on the table. Then I opened my laptop. Logged into my bank account. And stared at the automated transfer set for the 3rd of the month. $2,175. Scheduled. Recurring. 24 hours before it would process again. I hovered the mouse over the Cancel Transfer button. My hand didn't shake. Not even a little. I clicked. And the screen refreshed. Transfer cancelled. Just like that. That night, the house was quiet. Janine sat on the couch in her robe, feet curled under her, watching reruns of a baking show neither of us really cared about. She wasn't asking questions. She didn't have to. She'd heard the conversation. Every word. And like me, she'd memorized the silence that came after. I sat in my recliner, still in the jeans I'd worn to work. I hadn't even untied my boots. Just stared at the corner of the coffee table where a smudge of frosting from last weekend's uneaten cobbler still glistened faintly under the lamp. I didn't say anything. But inside, something had snapped. Not in anger. Not in rage. Just, something clean. Something final. A wire that had once held everything together now hung slack. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. 5:14 a.m. The house smelled like cold metal and coffee grounds. I stepped into the kitchen and started boiling water, not for coffee, but for something stronger. Old habits. When I feel the walls closing in, I go to work. Not to escape. Just to move. To do something. I went down to the basement and pulled out the old banker's box marked Hannah's house. Receipts. Loan agreements. Transfer confirmations. A letter I wrote to the mortgage officer explaining why I was putting my name on a property I didn't live in. They hadn't seen these papers in over a year. But I had. Every single time I opened my drawer to pay a bill, they were there, quietly reminding me that I wasn't just giving them money. I was giving them my future. My dignity. Piece by piece. By noon, I had a spreadsheet printed. 19 months. $2,175 per month. $41,325 total. And that was just the automated transfer. Not the weekend they called in a panic because the furnace was out. Not the $900 for the emergency water heater. Not the $1,500 for baby room renovations. Or the check I wrote to cover the deposit when Drew's bonus didn't come through. Janine came into the kitchen as I was tapping my calculator. She watched me from the doorway, then asked, "Are you doing it?" I looked at her. She'd stood by me through every hard year. Through every missed vacation. Every Sunday we ate spaghetti with no meat. Because we were helping Hannah. I already did, I said. She didn't say much after that. Just nodded once, and started making pancakes. That afternoon, my phone rang. Blocked number. I didn't answer. 10 minutes later, Hannah called. This time she left a voicemail. "Dad, can we talk?" It's not what you think. Drew was just stressed and said some things. I didn't mean for it to come out like that. You're still. I mean, you'll always be Elisa's grandpa. I played the message twice. She sounded almost sincere. But sincerity, like trust, has an expiration date. And this carton had been left open too long. I deleted the message. No reply. 3 days later, Janine got a call from her sister in Wyoming. "Did you hear?" she asked. Apparently, Hannah and Drew had to cancel their weekend trip to Aspen. Something about sudden financial reallocation. Drew had posted on social media that adulting is hard when the system fails you. I nearly choked on my tea. The system didn't fail you, son. You just ran out of fathers to fund your fantasy. The following Saturday, I cleaned out the garage. For hours, I worked in silence, reorganizing toolboxes, stacking scrap wood, throwing out broken rakes and half-used buckets of paint from their nursery project. By late afternoon, I'd uncovered the old rocking chair. The one Hannah had used when she was a baby. The one my father built before he passed. It had been collecting dust behind a mountain of Drew's storage that he'd never bothered to come back for. I dusted it off. Tightened the legs. Then dragged it upstairs. Janine raised an eyebrow when I set it beside the window in the den. "For who?" she asked softly. I didn't answer right away. I just stared out the frosted window, hands resting on the curved oak arms. "For us," I finally said. "For the peace that comes after noise." Later that evening, the doorbell rang. We weren't expecting anyone. Janine and I exchanged glances. When I opened the door, Drew was standing there. Alone. Hair slightly messed, eyes tired. He didn't greet me. Just said, "Can we talk?" I stepped aside without a word. He walked in, stiff as a board, like he was scared the furniture might bite. Janine stayed in the kitchen, pretending not to listen. "I know things have gotten tense," he started. I waited. "But we're trying, okay? Hannah's really upset. Elise misses you." I raised an eyebrow. "She's one," I said. "She's still working on her vowels." He looked down. Swallowed. "I guess I came to ask if you could help us this month. Just to cover until tax season. I'll pay you back. I swear." I stepped toward the counter. Picked up the banker's box. Pulled out a manila envelope. Handed it to him. "What's this?" "Your mortgage documents. I've removed myself as cosigner." His eyes widened. "You, what?" "I sent notice to the bank. You've got 60 days to refinance. Or sell." His mouth opened, then shut. Like a fish that suddenly realized it wasn't in water anymore. "You can't." "I can." And I did. Silence. Then, softer, "You'd really let us lose the house?" I tilted my head. "Drew, I never owned that house. I just paid for it." He left without slamming the door. That was something. But the look on his face. That was the sound of a man realizing the safety net had disappeared. That night, Janine brought me a glass of the expensive cider she always saves for holidays. I took a sip and leaned back in the rocking chair. Outside, snow started to fall. The flakes were thick. Slow. The kind that settled gently and bury things without noise. I watched it for a long time. And for the first time in months. I didn't feel tired. 1 week passed. Then 2. And by the 3rd, I could tell things had changed. Not for me. For them. The silence from their side wasn't strategic anymore, it was nervous. I'd stopped replying to texts. The first few were casual. "Hey, Dad. Just checking in." Then, "Elise tried to say Grandpa today." Then, "Drew wants to talk again, maybe clear the air." I left them unread. I wasn't being cruel. I wasn't playing games. I was just done. The month rolled on, and with it came the cold. January in Colorado is no joke: biting wind, ice on the inside of windows, power bills that make grown men weep. Drew and Hannah, used to comfortable heat and catered nights, suddenly had to choose between brand-name formula and a second space heater. Janine and I, on the other hand, were doing just fine. We cooked more, laughed more, rediscovered that rarest of luxuries, peace. One evening, while I was grilling chicken out on our back porch in a flannel jacket and knit gloves, Janine came out holding her phone. She raised her eyebrows. "Guess who just followed you on Facebook?" I smiled. "Drew." She nodded. "Twice. First with his main account, then with a burner. Said he accidentally unfollowed you." "He never followed me," I said. We clinked cider bottles and watched the chicken sizzle. February arrived with a thin layer of snow and a message from the bank. A formal letter, clean, cold font, informing Drew and Hannah that their refinance had been declined. Their credit was too new. Too stretched. No cosigner. No mercy. They had 30 days to make other arrangements. On the 3rd of February, the old payment date, I got a voicemail from Hannah. Her voice cracked midway through. "Dad, I'm scared. I know we screwed up. I know you're mad. But, we could lose everything. Can you at least talk to me? Please." That was the message I listened to 3 times. Not because I was cold. Because it broke something in me I thought I'd already buried. Not anger. Not vengeance. Just heartbreak. I'd built her future. Watched her erase me from it. And now here she was, voice trembling like a child again. Janine found me in the den that night. I was sitting in the rocking chair, holding an old photo, Hannah at 10, covered in flour from baking with Janine, laughing like nothing in the world could hurt her. "She's scared," I said. Janine nodded. "She should be." Silence stretched between us. "Do I call her back?" I asked. Janine gave me a long look. "No," she said. "Not until she remembers you're not a checkbook. You're her father." 2 days later, they showed up at our front door. In person. Hannah had Elise in her arms, wrapped in a puffy pink coat that looked too thin for the weather. Drew stood behind them, hands in his pockets, eyes down. I opened the door but didn't move aside. "Dad," Hannah began, eyes already wet. "We need help." Elise reached out a mittened hand toward me and made a soft babbling sound. I didn't speak. Just looked at the child I had once hoped to take fishing. To read bedtime stories to. To buy a red tricycle for. "Please," Hannah whispered. "We're going to lose the house." Drew finally raised his eyes. "We'll do whatever it takes. Rewrite the agreement. Pay you back. In full. Will you?" I said, voice low. "Will you treat me like family again, or just like the family bank?" They were silent. Janine stepped beside me and gently placed her hand on my shoulder. "Do you remember," she asked softly, "what you said when we were 24 and broke, and I offered to sell my mother's necklace to help with the store?" Hannah frowned, confused. Drew blinked. But I remembered. I remembered every word. I looked Hannah straight in the eye. I told her, "We don't fix things with things. We fix them with time, respect, and honesty." Drew opened his mouth, but I raised my hand. "I'm not here to humiliate you," I continued. "But I'm not here to rescue you either. Not anymore. You want my help?" I paused. "You come back next week. Without the child. Without the desperation. Just yourselves. Ready to talk. Not negotiate. Talk." Drew looked away. Hannah nodded, tears streaking her cheeks. "We will." I closed the door gently behind them. Not to shut them out. but to give them time to knock again as the people they used to be. That evening, I lit a fire in the living room. Janine brought out her knitting, I opened the paper. And for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't feel like a broken man waiting to be needed. I felt like a father who finally remembered what being a father meant. They came back, just like I asked. Exactly 1 week later. No child. No distractions. No excuses. It was a gray afternoon, the kind where the clouds sit low like they're trying to listen in. I'd made coffee. Janine had lit a candle that smelled like pine, the same kind she used every Christmas since Hannah was a teenager. The doorbell rang at 3 o'clock sharp. When I opened the door, they didn't smile. That was a good sign. No performance. No fake cheer. Just two people standing in their mistakes, unsure how deep the damage went. I gestured to the living room. They sat, not side by side, but at opposite ends of the couch. Something between them was cracking too. Good. Let it break. Sometimes, old things need to fall apart before better ones can begin. I sat in the rocking chair. Janine sat on the armrest beside me. Thank you for seeing us, Hannah said. I nodded once. I know we've hurt you. I know we've taken advantage of you. That much was true. She paused, like she was struggling to find the next word. I stayed quiet. Silence can do more than pressure ever will. We were proud, she finally said. Too proud to admit how much we depended on you. Drew cleared his throat. I was the one who said you shouldn't come to Elisa's birthday. I told her. I told her it would make things simpler. I tilted my head. Simpler for who? His face flushed. For us. I let that sit there. Heavy and undisturbed. Dad, Hannah continued, I think we forgot who we were raised by. You never made us feel poor, even when we were. You never missed a meal, even if it meant skipping your own. And when Drew and I got in trouble, you didn't hesitate, not once. I still didn't speak. But Janine reached out and placed her hand over mine. A silent reminder that I didn't have to be the strong one today. Not anymore. We want to make it right, Hannah said. I finally looked up. Do you? I asked. She blinked. Yes. Then let me ask you something, I said, my voice low but steady. Would you have come here today, if the bank hadn't said no? Neither of them answered. That's what I thought. Drew shifted uncomfortably. We were wrong. You weren't just wrong, I replied. You were cruel. You used words like aligned values and curated circle, like I was some dusty old rug that didn't match your decor. Hannah's eyes filled. I didn't mean it like that. You didn't stop it either. Her lips trembled. I took a breath and leaned forward in the chair. You thought I was always going to be there. No matter what. That no matter how far you pushed, I'd always come crawling back because I'm your father. That I'd always pay, always forgive, always show up. Drew looked away. Hannah stared into her lap. You were wrong. Janine stood. Quietly. Calmly. Walked into the kitchen and returned with a folder. Inside was a copy of every payment I'd made over the last 2 years. Each check. Each wire. Each receipt. She set it on the coffee table without a word. You don't owe us a dime, I said. Both of them looked up. But don't ever ask for $1 again. Not unless it's for Elisa's emergency medical care. Not unless it's life or death. Hannah opened her mouth. I held up a hand. I'm not cutting you off out of punishment. I'm cutting you off because I finally realized something, I was paying to be tolerated. And that's not love. Silence. The kind that doesn't echo. The kind that settles into the spine. Then Hannah whispered, "Is there any chance to start again?" I looked at Janine. She gave the smallest nod. "Maybe," I said. "But not like this." She looked confused. "You don't get to show up and cry and hope everything's fine in a week. Trust takes time. You don't rebuild a bridge with tears. You rebuild it with planks. One at a time." Hannah nodded, biting her lower lip. Drew finally spoke. "We'll do the work." I looked at him. Really looked. "I hope you mean that. Because if this is just another performance, you won't get another scene." They left half an hour later. No hugs. No promises. Just the small grace of accountability. And for now, that was enough. That evening, Janine and I went for a walk. The air was sharp, but the sky was wide and clear. "Do you think they'll change?" she asked. I thought for a long moment before answering. "I think they've finally seen the cliff's edge," I said. "And maybe, just maybe, they understand now that I was never the one standing closest to it." They didn't call for 9 days. Not a word. Not a message. No sudden knocks at the door. No accidental voicemails. Just silence. And surprisingly, it didn't hurt. It was peaceful. Like the air after a thunderstorm. You know something broke, but what remains is clearer, sharper. Janine and I fell back into old rhythms. Breakfast together. Grocery runs. Even a weekend trip to Estes Park, our first real getaway in years. We stayed in a small cabin with wood panel walls and a creaky porch swing. No internet. No notifications. I spent the morning sipping coffee while watching snow settle across the treetops. Janine crocheted and talked about repainting the guest room. It felt like healing. And for once, we weren't waiting for Hannah to remember us. We were remembering ourselves. On the 10th day, a small envelope arrived in the mailbox. No return address. Inside was a handwritten card. "We know we have a long way to go. But thank you for giving us the chance to start. We're working on the mortgage. We'll figure it out. Love, Hannah and Drew." No request. No manipulation. Just ink and humility. I showed Janine. She smiled. "Better," she said. 2 weeks later, Drew texted me a photo of Elise holding a wooden block with the letter G on it. She said, "Grandpa, today. I think." It came out more like Gaba. But we're counting it. I didn't reply. But I didn't delete it either. Progress. One plank at a time. March rolled in with warmer winds. I was back at the shop, checking spring inventory when Janine called me from home. "She's here," she said. I didn't need to ask who. I drove back slowly. No rush. No anxiety. When I walked in, Hannah was sitting at the kitchen table, a small box in front of her. Her face looked different. Not just tired, softened. "Hey," she said. I nodded. "Hey." She pushed the box toward me. Inside was a small photo album. Handmade. Each page had a photo of Elise, with a handwritten caption. Elise's first snow. Elise trying applesauce. Elise looking suspiciously at her grandfather's photo. Elise falling asleep on her mother's chest. I flipped through it slowly. The pages smelled like lavender and glue. "Drew came up with the idea," she said. But I picked the pictures. I closed the album gently. "It's beautiful," I said. She exhaled a breath she'd probably been holding since she parked the car. "I'm not here to ask for anything," she said. "I just wanted you to know we haven't forgotten." She stayed for half an hour. We didn't talk much. Didn't rehash the past. Just sat. Two people trying to find a language they hadn't spoken in years. When she left, Janine came out from the bedroom. She didn't ask for money. Nope. Did you offer any? Nope. We both smiled. That night, I got a text from Drew. We're listing the house next month. Got an offer on a smaller place closer to town. We're not asking for help. Just wanted you to know. We also wanted to ask something else. Would it be okay if Elise came to visit for a weekend sometime? Just her. With us. We'd like her to know who her grandparents really are. Janine and I stared at the screen. She looked at me. Well. I thought about it. All of it. The years. The silence. The pain. The dismissal. The regrowth. And then I said, not yet. She blinked. Not yet? I nodded. I'm not punishing them. I just want them to understand, some doors stay closed until you're ready to enter with clean hands. That Sunday, we went to church for the first time in a long time. I shook old friends' hands. Janine joined the flower committee again. Afterward, we walked to the corner diner for soup and cornbread. We didn't talk about Hannah. Or Elise. Or the house. We just talked about the tomatoes we'd plant in spring. The bookshelf I was finally going to build. And the peace of loving someone who finally learned to love you back, slowly, respectfully, and without a price tag. It was mid-April when it happened. The trees were just beginning to stretch. Little buds on the maples out back. Crocuses pushing through the cold soil. That strange tension in the air, winter not quite gone, spring not yet certain. That's when the text came. We're ready. We'd like to bring Elise this weekend. Only if you still want that, of course. I showed it to Janine, then set the phone face down. Feels different now, I said. It is, she replied. They're not inviting you into their life. They're asking to be invited into yours. We said yes. But not immediately. We waited an hour. Not out of spite, but to remind ourselves. Our silence now has value. They arrived Saturday morning. Just the three of them. No diaper bags exploding with noise. No rushed excuses. No forced cheer. Drew stepped out first. Opened the back door gently. Hannah unbuckled Elise and lifted her carefully out of the car seat. She was bigger now. Almost 2. Hair a bit longer. Eyes clearer. And as they walked up the sidewalk toward our house, Elise pointed toward the porch swing and said something that sounded like, we. I didn't smile. Not yet. But Janine did. When I opened the door, no one rushed forward. There were no running hugs, no dramatic moments of reunion. Just Hannah saying, "Hi, Dad," and Drew nodding politely. Elise blinked up at me. She didn't know who I was. Not really. And I didn't expect her to. Would you like to come in? I asked. They nodded. And just like that, they stepped into my space, not because they owned it, but because I let them. The house had been cleaned, but not too much. No fresh flowers. No catered snacks. Janine had made a simple apple tart, and we had tea on the table. Elise wandered the living room. She was quiet. Observing. She pointed at the photo of Janine and me from our 30th anniversary and asked, "Nana?" Janine smiled. "That's me, baby girl." Elise looked at me, then looked away. No words. But that was okay. I wasn't rushing the connection anymore. She would come to know me when she was ready, not when her parents decided I was convenient. We didn't talk about the past. There were no speeches, no apologies. Not today. Hannah asked about the apple tree in the backyard. Drew commented on the new rocking chair by the window. I answered. Briefly. Calmly. This was my house, my rules, my rhythm. They followed it. At one point, Elise climbed up on the couch beside me and handed me one of the wooden blocks she'd brought in her backpack. The letter R is for Ron, I said softly. She didn't say anything. But she didn't pull the block away either. That was enough. After an hour, Hannah stood. We don't want to overstay. That was new. They used to assume time from me. Now, they asked permission to share it. Janine walked them out. I followed behind. At the car, Hannah hesitated. She turned to me. Would it be okay if she stayed sometime soon? Just her. Drew added, we'd bring her bag, food, toys, everything. We'd stay nearby. I looked at Elise, now strapped into her seat, babbling to herself and chewing the ear of a stuffed giraffe. I'll think about it, I said. They didn't argue. Just nodded. Thank you, Hannah whispered. That night, Janine and I sat in the living room in silence. No TV. No music. Just the sound of a home no longer burdened by hope, but filled instead with balance. They're trying, she said. They are, I agreed. She looked at me. You gonna let her stay next time? I shrugged. Maybe. When I know it's for her, not for them. Before bed, I went out to the shed. I pulled out the little red tricycle I'd kept stored for 2 years. The one I'd nearly given away when they cut me out. I dusted it off. Tightened the bolts. The paint was still good. The seat a little stiff, but nothing a little polish wouldn't fix. I set it in the corner of the garage. Not as a promise. Not as bait. Just as a quiet symbol. If she comes back, truly comes back, there will be something waiting. But this time, I won't be the one chasing her. The invitation came in a plain white envelope. No text. No email. No call. Just a card, handwritten in Hannah's script. Elise keeps pointing at the photo of you in her playroom and saying, Papa chair. We told her she can visit, if Papa says yes. No pressure. Just love. H&D. Janine found it in the mailbox. She didn't say anything. Just slid it across the kitchen table, beside my coffee and the half-folded newspaper. I read it twice. She watched my face. Waited. Well, she finally asked. I leaned back, folded the card, and said. Let's get the guest room ready. They brought her Saturday morning. Just Elise. No overnight bags with designer labels. No long-winded instructions. Just a simple duffel with 3 onesies, a toothbrush, a purple stuffed giraffe, and 2 small books. Janine took the bag. Drew kissed Elise's head. Hannah lingered at the doorway a moment longer. She's been asking to come for days, she whispered. Not because we told her to. Just because she wanted to. I nodded. Didn't say anything. That was the agreement now. No begging. No bargaining. Just space. They left without lingering. The first hour was quiet. Elise explored. Touched the embroidered pillows Janine had sewn. Sat at the kitchen table and asked about the painting on the wall. Pointed at the rocking chair and said, Papa chair. I smiled. Just slightly. We made macaroni and cheese together. Real cheese, not powdered. Janine showed her how to use a mixing spoon. Elise dropped noodles twice, giggled both times. Later, she brought me one of the books, Goodnight Moon. I'd read it to Hannah hundreds of times. Now, I read it again, slower, deeper, like the words meant something new now. When I finished, Elise looked up and said, again. So I read it again. At nap time, she didn't cry. She just curled up with her giraffe on the small daybed Janine had made up with extra pillows and soft fleece. I sat beside the door. Listened to her breathing. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a man asking to belong. I felt like a man who already did. When she woke up, we walked outside. The weather was gentle, warm enough for just a sweater. I took her hand and led her to the garage. I opened the door and showed her the red tricycle. Her eyes lit up. I said nothing. Just helped her climb onto the seat and steadied the handles as she squealed. She pushed with her feet, slowly, clumsily, and made it halfway down the driveway before stopping. "Papa, I did it," she yelled. I clapped once. "You sure did." Then she rode again. Not far. Not fast. But enough. That night, after her bath and one more reading of Goodnight Moon, she curled up on the couch with Janine. She fell asleep holding Janine's hand. I watched them for a long time, 2 generations of love, both so fragile and yet somehow stronger than anything else. When Hannah and Drew arrived the next morning, Elise didn't want to leave. She hugged Janine, then toddled over to me and held up her arms. I lifted her. She rested her head on my shoulder for a moment. Then whispered, "Papa chair, again soon." I nodded. "Soon," I said. After they left, Janine closed the front door and turned to me. "She called you Papa." I nodded, slowly. "She means it now," I said. She chose it. We had tea on the porch that evening. No music. Just the sound of the wind brushing through the trees. "Do you think she'll remember all this?" Janine asked. I didn't hesitate. "No," I said. "But one day, she'll feel it, even if she doesn't know where it came from." They came back the following weekend. Not for another visit, not just to drop off Elise. They brought something else this time. A folder. A smile. And a mistake. It was a Saturday afternoon. Elise was napping in the den, curled up on the couch with a blanket Janine had crocheted from leftover yarn. She slept so deeply now. Like she'd finally decided this place was hers too. The knock on the door was soft. Almost, careful. I opened it to find Hannah and Drew standing there, holding coffee and something tucked under Drew's arm. "We brought you something," Hannah said, smiling in that way she used to when she was about to bend the truth. Janine met them in the kitchen. They sat at the table like guests, not family, still unsure where they stood. Then Drew slid the folder across the table. "What's this?" I asked. He straightened up. "We sold the Fort Collins house. Got a decent offer, just enough to clear the loan. We bought something smaller. Closer to town. Less show, more home." He nodded at the folder. "That's a cashier's check," he said. $41, $3.25. Every penny you gave us. With interest." I opened the folder slowly. The check was real. Crisp. Heavy paper. Hannah had written a note on the bottom. "We meant what we said. One plank at a time." Janine looked at me, then back at them. Her eyes said everything, this could be the moment. But I didn't move. I stared at the check for a long time. Then pushed it gently back across the table. Drew blinked. "You're not taking it?" "No," I said quietly. "Why not?" Hannah asked. "It's yours. You earned it." "That's the problem," I said. "You still think this was ever about money?" She frowned. "Wasn't it?" "No. It was about worth." I stood slowly, walked to the window, and looked out at the street. Then back at them. You don't pay back dignity. You don't refund years. You don't write a check for being made to feel like an outsider in your own bloodline. Drew looked down. Hannah bit her lip. "This isn't punishment," I continued. "This is a reminder, you can't undo what's been done with money. You can only move forward with actions that don't cost a cent." I walked back to the table. Rested a hand on the folder. I'm not taking this. Not because I'm angry, but because you've already started paying it back the right way. With time. With Elise. With honesty. Drew looked stunned. Hannah whispered, "You still love us, don't you?" I looked at her for a long moment. "Of course I do," I said. "But for a while. I had to love you from a distance. And I won't go back to pretending that what happened didn't matter." They stayed for dinner. Nothing fancy. Baked chicken. Potatoes. A side of peas Elise threw at the dog. We laughed. Talked. Caught up on small things. No one mentioned the check again. When they left, Hannah paused at the door. "We'd like to come next weekend." "All of us." I nodded. "That'd be nice. And, we won't bring gifts or offers or any of that." "Good," I said. "Just bring yourselves." That's the only thing I was ever waiting for. Later that night, after Elise was asleep upstairs and the dishwasher hummed, Janine poured me a glass of wine and sat beside me on the porch. "You surprised them," she said. "They still think everything has a price," I replied. "But not everything that's broken is a transaction. Some things are sacred." She looked at me. "So what do you call what just happened?" I thought about it. Then said, softly, "A down payment on becoming a family again." The next weekend, the kitchen smelled like cinnamon and home. Janine had been baking since morning. Not because Hannah and Drew were coming over, but because she felt like it. That was the difference now. We weren't bending over backward for them. We were living our lives, and if they wanted to step into it, they had to walk on our terms. At 2 p.m. I heard a car pull into the driveway. No honking. No rushed calls asking if we were ready. Just quiet footsteps coming up the walk. When I opened the door, Hannah was holding Elise in one arm and a small bouquet of wildflowers in the other. "These are for Mom," she said. Janine smiled, took them, and gave Hannah a brief hug, the kind that says, "I'll forgive, but I'll never forget." Drew stepped in next. He wasn't carrying gifts or apologies. Just himself. That, for once, was enough. We sat around the table, eating cinnamon rolls and sipping tea. No tension. No hidden agenda. Elise was the star of the show, laughing, pointing at things, trying to say, "Papa chair," every time she saw me sit down. At one point, she tugged at my sleeve and asked, "Papa, outside?" I nodded and took her out to the porch swing. She climbed into my lap, holding her stuffed giraffe, and pointed at the sky. "Clouds," she said. "That's right," I replied softly. "Clouds." She looked at me for a moment, then said something that nearly stopped my heart. "Love you, Papa." She didn't say it like she'd been coached. She said it like she'd chosen it. And for a moment, all the old hurt, the rejection, the arrogance, the feeling of being erased, faded into something smaller. Not gone. Just, manageable. When we came back inside, Hannah was clearing plates while Janine poured more tea. Drew stood awkwardly, like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Finally, he looked at me. "Ron, I know I've been difficult." I raised an eyebrow. "That's one word for it." He chuckled nervously. "I don't expect you to forgive me overnight. But I want to be better. For Hannah. For Elise. And for you, if you'll let me." I studied him. Really studied him. For the first time, I didn't just see a man who'd married my daughter. I saw a man who was finally learning what it meant to be a husband. A father. A son-in-law. "I don't need perfect," I said. "I just need respect." He nodded. "You have it." That night, after they left, Janine and I sat on the porch swing. She held my hand, her thumb brushing against my knuckles. You know, she said, it's starting to feel like home again. I nodded. But it's different now. Stronger, maybe. She tilted her head. You going to let them come for Easter dinner? I thought about it. About how far we'd come. About how much further we still had to go. Maybe, I said. But I'm keeping one more chair at the table, not for them, but for the boundaries that built this peace. They need to remember that. Janine smiled. Boundaries and cinnamon rolls. Who knew that's what it would take? I laughed. A real laugh. The kind I hadn't heard from myself in years. Easter came. Not with fanfare. Not with big announcements or dramatic family group texts. Just a simple call from Hannah 2 weeks before. We'd love to join you, if you'd like us. I said yes. Not because I needed them there. But because I finally knew that I didn't. The table was set with mismatched plates, some from our wedding registry, others thrifted over the years. Janine used her mother's linen napkins, the ones with tiny embroidered flowers. There were 6 chairs. 1 for me. 1 for Janine. 1 for Hannah. 1 for Drew. 1 for Elise. And 1 more. An empty chair. Quiet. Undisturbed. I didn't explain it. I didn't have to. That chair wasn't for a person. It was for everything we'd lost. Everything we'd learned. Everything that would never be allowed back into this house, disrespect, entitlement, the old power dynamic. It sat at the end of the table like a quiet reminder. You may be welcome here, but you will never rule here again. Elise had grown. She sat beside me now, legs swinging under the table, holding a spoon like it was a sword. She called Janine Nana, and called me Papa like it was the most natural thing in the world. She asked to say the prayer before the meal. And when she did, it wasn't polished. It wasn't even intelligible in parts. But she finished with, "Thank you for family." And Papa's chair. The room went still. Janine's eyes filled. Hannah covered her mouth. Drew lowered his head. I just smiled. That chair, the one I thought I'd once been pushed out of, had never been taken from me. I had simply stood beside it, quietly, until everyone finally noticed it had been empty all along. After dinner, Hannah stayed behind while Drew took Elise out to the backyard. She helped clear dishes. Washed. Dried. No fuss. When the kitchen was clean, she leaned on the counter and looked at me. You never yelled at me, she said quietly. You never told me off. Not once. Even when I deserved it. I nodded slowly. I didn't need to. I already knew the truth. I just waited for you to learn it, too. She looked down. I wish I could take it all back. I stepped closer. Rested my hand on her shoulder. You can't, I said. But you don't have to. Just don't forget it. She nodded. Then whispered. Thanks for keeping the door cracked open, even when I slammed it shut. Later that night, after everyone had gone and the house was quiet again, Janine brought out a photo. It was Elise, sitting in the red tricycle I'd once almost thrown away. Smiling. Hands raised. Wind in her hair. I stared at it for a long time. That image held everything. The years we lost. The family we became. And the man I had to become to get here. As I slid the photo into the new family album, Janine asked, "Is the story over?" I shook my head. No. It's just the end of the first volume. She smiled. What would you call this one? I thought about it. About everything. About the silence. The rejection. The return. And finally, the respect. Then I said. The last word belonged to me, because I earned it without speaking.